What happens when the President of the United States turns off the lifeline to an industry that feeds the world? In a country where cornfields stretch beyond the horizon and grain silos rise like monuments to American resilience, a silent revolt is now erupting. One not with fire, but with fallow fields. One not with noise, but with a deafening silence. Across the rural heartland, farmers are laying down their tools, shutting off the irrigation, and locking their grain bins. They are not lazy. They are angry, and they are fighting back. Since January, the Trump administration has moved to cancel or freeze trillions in federal funding, including billions from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But this isn't just paperwork. It's a sabotage in slow motion, grinding the gears of a $1.537 trillion industry to a halt. From Pennsylvania to Iowa, from wheat farmers to organic co-ops, thousands of contracts once guaranteed by the USDA have been frozen. Signed promises are being shredded, and in their place, uncertainty, debt, and betrayal. America's food system is cracking, not from foreign enemies, but from executive decisions made within its own borders. So what really happened? Why are American farmers revolting against the very man they once overwhelmingly voted for? And what does this mean for your food, your economy, and your country? In this video, let's find out. When Donald Trump walked back into the White House in January 2025, his pen moved faster than the plow. In a blitz of executive orders aimed at dismantling what his team labeled as wasteful liberal spending, he unleashed a chain reaction that blindsided rural America. His most disruptive move? Freezing federal reimbursements to farmers under the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These weren't vague proposals or distant threats. They were immediate, enforced suspensions that reached deep into the pockets of thousands of farmers who had trusted their government. Among the hardest hit was Scott Monroe, a corn, soy, and wheat farmer in central Pennsylvania. In 2023, Monroe invested $250,000 in a solar energy system for his farm, a system he wouldn't have even considered installing without the promise of a $94,000 USDA grant. That money was part of a broader clean energy strategy designed to ease farmers' operational costs. Monroe upheld his end. He installed, operated, and maintained the system. But just as he reached the milestone to receive reimbursement, the Trump administration yanked the funding. Now, Monroe and over 30,000 others are left with half-finished projects and full-scale debts. Interestingly, the freeze did more than disrupt accounting spreadsheets. It disrupted entire crop cycles. Fields that should have been prepared for spring planting were left idle. Irrigation systems shut down. Farmers who had taken on risk in good faith began hitting the brakes. In effect, production itself is beginning to pause, not because the land can't produce, but because the government refused to pay what it promised. However, to understand the depth of this betrayal, we must revisit the law that made these contracts possible: the Inflation Reduction Act. Enacted in 2022, the IRA was never just a climate bill. For rural America, it was an economic lifeline. It injected nearly $38 billion into agriculture with the goal of not just growing crops, but modernizing how they were grown. Through programs like the Conservation Stewardship Program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, Regional Conservation Partnerships, and the Rural Energy for America program, it aimed to reward innovation and resilience. These weren't subsidies for luxury. These were smart, tested strategies that had a proven track record. Cover cropping to prevent soil erosion, efficient irrigation to cut water costs, solar installations to power equipment, all while reducing long-term emissions and increasing profitability. The IRA ensured farmers weren't punished for modernizing. Instead, it gave them the means to lead America into a sustainable food future. Over 30,715 farmers signed legally binding contracts. The government committed over $2.3 billion. And then, within weeks of Trump's second term, it all froze. Farmers who had expanded their organic farm with the help of IRA-funded cover crop grants now face a brutal choice. Let the soil degrade or take on crushing personal debt to do what the USDA had promised to support. The program had momentum. It was popular across party lines. But the freeze stopped not only money, but morale. It told farmers that the rug could be pulled at any time, and that trust was optional. You see, the trust that bound the farmer to the government is not an abstract idea. It lives on ink and paper, legal contracts that specify responsibilities, deadlines, and reimbursements. The USDA's model requires upfront farmer investment, sometimes reaching $450,000. Once benchmarks are met, the government reimburses the cost. That system depends entirely on reliability. By freezing IRA-related funds, Trump didn't just cancel new applications. He violated existing contracts. Farmers had already started or completed projects. The only thing they waited for was the check, and the check never came. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, and current affairs impacting your lives. The betrayal has now triggered a wave of fallout. In Pennsylvania, nonprofit organizations like PASA Sustainable Agriculture, which coordinated these grants across 15 states, suspended nearly their entire workforce. Lawsuits are now being filed not just by environmental activists, but by the very heartland Trump once claimed to champion. Farms across the Midwest and Northeast began canceling plans to expand into new crops. Others halted critical conservation practices, knowing their soils and yields would suffer. This isn't a case of political sour grapes. It's a breach of contract. Thousands of farmers, some multi-generational, are learning the hard way that good faith and federal loyalty no longer walk hand in hand. But the funding freeze was only one punch. The second came from abroad. As if destabilizing local investments wasn't enough, Trump reignited the global trade wars that haunted his first term. This time, tariffs hit harder, faster, and wider. By late 2024, he had slapped 25% duties on Canadian and Mexican imports and doubled tariffs on Chinese goods to 20%. The retaliation was swift. China levied new tariffs on $21 billion in U.S. agricultural exports. Canada turned its sights on American poultry and wheat. Mexico adjusted its import sources to South America. The three largest buyers of U.S. agricultural goods turned hostile overnight. Now, American farmers aren't just lacking domestic support, they are shut out of global markets. At the same time, they are facing spiking costs. Fertilizer prices jumped, with potash imports from Canada hit hard. Equipment costs climbed as steel and aluminum tariffs kicked in. The result? Farmers are producing food they can't sell, using materials they can barely afford. And the systems that might have helped them weather this storm, like energy efficiency projects, crop diversification grants, and conservation easements, have all been shelved by the same administration that created the storm. And now, the numbers confirm the nightmare. Since their 2022 highs, prices for corn, soybeans, cotton, and wheat have plummeted. Net farm income, once at a record $182 billion, dropped to $141 billion in 2024. The USDA expects another dip in 2025. Meanwhile, costs are rising. Tariffs have made fertilizers, machinery, and even transportation more expensive. The Mississippi River's ongoing drought reduced shipping capacity, forcing farmers to use costlier land transport options. To bridge the gap, farmers are borrowing at historic rates. Agricultural debt grew nearly 10% in 2024 alone. Even farms that remain solvent, with decent debt-to-asset ratios, are running out of credit room. Many are collateralizing land, equipment, and even future yields. But faith in recovery is waning. Short-term land value forecasts are falling. And in farming, land is everything. At the same time, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins released a mere $20 million of the promised $2.3 billion. It was a drop of hope in a flood of despair. You see, farmers aren't just facing seasonal loss, they are confronting systemic collapse. But why now? Why this shift in tone from an electorate that once backed Trump in record numbers? Because this time, the lie is too big to swallow. In his first term, Trump launched trade wars that hurt farmers, but covered it up with $23 billion in subsidies. Many accepted the bailout, but the damage was real: lost markets, rising debt, disillusionment masked by patriotism. Now the same playbook is being used. A new $10 billion relief package was announced late in 2024. But farmers aren't buying it. They see the freeze on existing contracts. They see global markets turning away. And they see that subsidies can't buy back trust. Now public revolts have begun. Town halls in Iowa and Pennsylvania are filled with furious farmers. Organized planting boycotts have been proposed, not as a protest, but as a survival tactic. In some states, farmers are halting production altogether, not out of spite, but to prevent deeper losses. Political loyalty is unraveling, replaced by raw economic pain. Trump may still have a strong base, but that base is thinning in the heartland. The collapse of trust between the government and farmers isn't a rural issue. It's national. If 30,000 small and mid-size farms fail to plant or harvest, the consequences will ripple through every grocery aisle in America. Food prices will spike. Corn and wheat shortages will ripple into everything from bread to biofuel. Meat prices will soar as livestock feed becomes scarce. Imports may rise, but at the cost of national food security and supply chain resilience. Meanwhile, the USDA, once seen as a pillar of rural stability, now stands accused of violating its own contracts. Its credibility has eroded not through scandal, but through silence and inaction. For an institution that once symbolized federal partnership with the land, it now represents betrayal. You see, this is not just an economic crisis. It's a political, institutional, and moral collapse. Farmers are no longer asking for favors. They are demanding what they were promised. And the question hanging over Washington is no longer whether the administration can win back the heartland. The question is, does it even care if it loses it? What do you think will happen to a country when its farmers, the backbone of its economy, decide to stop planting? How long can America survive when its food producers are forced into debt, silence, or shutdown? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on why Trump is punishing farmers, without whom the United States can barely survive. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, changing world order, and current affairs, things you need to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.